Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into a world where a gallon of rot-gut gin costs 50 cents to make and sells for $6, and where a single man built an empire worth over $1 billion in today's money before he even hit his 30th birthday. 557 million. That's the estimated annual income, adjusted for inflation, of the outfit at its peak. Ever wonder what it feels like to have a major American city's mayor on your personal payroll? Or how to launder a mountain of cash so high it physically starts to rot in the basement before you can spend it? This is Prohibition-era Chicago, a place where the bullets fly as fast as the jazz, and the police are often just criminals with shiny badges. You'll need a silk suit, a fedora, and a stomach of steel, because let's be honest, statistically speaking, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how global our little late-night club has become. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. But here's where things get strange right off the bat. Before you are the king of Chicago, you are just a bouncer in Brooklyn with a very bad temper and a face that's about to get ruined. You are standing in the doorway of the Harvard Inn on Coney Island. The year is roughly 1917. The air smells of salt spray, stale beer, and cheap cologne. You are Alphonse Capone, barely 18 years old, burly, thick-necked, and anxious to prove you're tough enough for the big leagues. You aren't the boss yet. You're just the muscle for a guy named Frankie Yale. You wear cheap suits and you talk too much. And tonight, your mouth is going to write a check your face can't cash. You make a crude comment to a woman at the bar. Her name is Lena, and her brother, Frank Galluccio, doesn't take kindly to it. In a split second, the air shifts from a dull roar of conversation to sharp violence. Galluccio pulls a knife. You aren't fast enough. Slash, slash, slash. 3 deep cuts across your left cheek and neck. The blood is hot. The pain is searing, and just like that, you earn the nickname you will hate for the rest of your life. Scarface. You'll spend the next decade telling photographers to shoot you from your right side, or claiming these are war wounds from the Lost Battalion in France, even though the only trench you've ever been in is the gutter of Brooklyn. It's a harsh lesson in humility, or perhaps just a lesson in dodging faster. But scars aren't the only thing you'll bring from New York. You have a mentor. A man named Johnny Torrio. They call him the Fox, or the Brain. While other gangsters are busy breaking kneecaps, Torrio is building spreadsheets. He's calm, he's slight, and he doesn't drink or smoke. He teaches you that a gang shouldn't operate like a pack of wolves fighting over a carcass. It should run like a corporation. Efficiency, supply chains, mergers and acquisitions. You soak this up. You realize that violence is bad for business, unless, of course, it's absolutely necessary to clear the market. Then, the call comes. It's 1919. Torrio has moved out west to Chicago to manage the empire of his uncle by marriage, Big Jim Colosimo. Torrio needs a trusted hand, someone young and hungry. Chicago is calling you. You pack your bags, kiss your mother, and board a train headed for the Midwest. As the train chugs through the industrial heartland, the rhythm of the tracks lulls you into a trance. Clack, clack, whoosh. Clack, clack, whoosh. You are leaving the crowded tenements of New York for the wide-open prairie of corruption that is Chicago. When you step onto the platform at Union Station, the city hits you like a physical blow. It's louder, dirtier, and rawer than New York. The stockyards smell of blood and manure. The factories belch black smoke that coats the buildings in soot, and the Levee District is a neon-lit playground of vice that never sleeps. You meet up with Torrio, and he introduces you to the lay of the land. The boss, Big Jim Colosimo, is a relic of the Victorian era. He runs hundreds of brothels and gambling dens. He wears white suits and diamonds so large they look like glass doorknobs. He's happy, he's rich, but he's missing the biggest wave in history. See, everybody knows the 18th Amendment has been ratified. Prohibition is coming. On January 17, 1920, the Volstead Act will go into effect, turning the manufacture and sale of alcohol into a federal crime. Torrio looks at this and sees a gold mine. He does the math. People aren't going to stop drinking just because the government says so. They're just going to pay a premium to criminals who can get it for them. Torrio wants to convert the brothels into speakeasies. He wants to buy breweries. He wants to organize. Big Jim Colosimo, however, says no. He thinks it's too much heat. Why mess with the feds, he argues, when the girls and the dice are making us plenty? It's a classic corporate disagreement, really. The CEO is risk-averse, but the VP of operations sees the future. In the underworld, though, you don't call a board meeting to resolve this. You handle it differently. On a pleasant afternoon in May 1920, Big Jim walks into his own cafe to meet someone. He's expecting a business delivery. Instead, a figure steps out from the vestibule cloakroom. 2 shots ring out. Big Jim falls, his diamonds clattering against the tile floor. The era of the pimp is over. The era of the bootlegger has begun. Now, historians still argue whether it was you, Al Capone, who pulled the trigger that day, or if it was your old boss, Frankie Yale, brought in from New York as a specialist contractor. You were definitely in the city, and you definitely benefited from the vacancy. But you've learned Torrio's lessons well. You were nowhere near the scene, officially. You have an alibi as solid as concrete. With Colosimo out of the way, Torrio takes the throne, and you become his right hand. You move your operations to the Four Deuces, a 4-story building at 2222 South Wabash. It's a one-stop shop for vice, a saloon on the 1st floor, gambling on the 2nd and 3rd, and a brothel on the 4th. You set up your office. You print business cards that read, Alphonse Capone, second-hand furniture dealer. It's a cheeky little joke, a nod to the fact that you do move furniture, mostly when you're throwing it at people who don't pay up, or perhaps because you treat politicians like antique armchairs to be bought and sold. You are now in the thick of it. The demand for alcohol is instantaneous and insatiable. You and Torrio start buying up closed breweries, places that were forced to shut down by the new law. You hire the old brewmasters who are out of work. You buy trucks. You bribe the local precinct captains. You start to see the money trickle in, first as a stream, then as a river. But don't get too comfortable in that office chair at the Four Deuces. The money is good, but the streets are getting dangerous. Other gangs, the Northsiders, the O'Donnell brothers, the Jennas, they all want a piece of this new lucrative pie. Chicago is carved up into territories, invisible lines drawn on maps that, if crossed, result in shotgun blasts from passing sedans. You are young, only in your early 20s, wearing flashy pastel suits and smiling for the press. But the pressure is mounting. Torrio is the brain, but you are the muscle, the face, and the looming threat. You look out the window of the Four Deuces, watching the rain slick the streets of the South Side. You feel the weight of a .38 revolver in your shoulder holster, a constant, cold companion against your ribs. You've come a long way from the Brooklyn docks, but the stakes here are infinitely higher. In Brooklyn, a fight meant a slashed face. In Chicago, it means a shallow grave in the Indiana dunes. You think you're ready for the violence that's coming, but you have no idea just how brutal the competition is about to get. Torrio is smart, but he's not a warrior. And soon, the weight of the entire organization is going to fall squarely on your pinstriped shoulders. But here's where things get strange. The man who taught you that patience pays off, who preached that negotiation is cheaper than bullets, suddenly finds himself on the wrong end of a very loud argument. See, in this line of work, retirement plans usually involve a pine box and a slow ride in a hearse. But your mentor, Johnny Torrio, has different ideas. He wants to live. And that desire is about to make you the undisputed king of Chicago, before you're even old enough to rent a car in the modern world. You are living in a pressure cooker. The truce between the gangs has shattered, largely because the erratic Irish boss of the North Side, Dean O'Banion, was gunned down in his flower shop a few months prior, a hit that everyone knows your outfit ordered. O'Banion's friends, Jaime Weiss and Bugs Moran, aren't the forgiving types. They are hunting you. You've already upgraded your car to a custom Cadillac with bulletproof glass and steel plating, a literal tank on white wall tires. But Torrio? He's still acting like a civilian. It is January 24th, 1925. You aren't with Torrio at this specific moment, which is terrifying because you are supposed to be his shield. Torrio is coming back to his apartment on South Clyde Avenue with his wife, Anna. They've been grocery shopping. It's a mundane, domestic Saturday afternoon. He's carrying packages, walking up the steps, completely exposed. A blue limousine idles nearby. Two men jump out. It's Weiss and Moran. They don't say a word. They just open fire. Bullets shred Torrio's coat and hat. He takes a slug to the jaw, one to the stomach, one to the arm. He collapses on the concrete. Then, the ultimate nightmare scenario plays out. Bugs Moran walks up to the fallen Brain, presses a .45 automatic to Torrio's temple to deliver the coup de grace, the finishing kill. Click. The gun jams. Let that sink in for a second. The entire history of American organized crime pivots on a single, faulty spring in a pistol. If that gun fires, Torrio dies, the outfit crumbles into chaos, and you probably die in the ensuing power vacuum. But the gun jams. The drivers in the getaway car honk the horn in panic, and the hitmen flee. Torrio is alive, but he is broken. You rush to Jackson Park Hospital. When you see him, swathed in bandages, barely able to speak through his wired-shut jaw, you realize the invincible architect of the underworld is just a man of flesh and blood. You set up a 24-hour guard. You sleep in a cot in the corridor, a Thompson submachine gun across your lap. You are terrified, yes, but you are also angry. Torrio survives, but the fight has left him. He looks at you with weary eyes. He's managed to wriggle into a short jail sentence for an old bootlegging charge, a strategic retreat to the safety of a cell in Lake County Jail. When he gets out, he calls you in. He tells you he's done. He's taking his millions. He's going back to Brooklyn, and eventually to Italy. He wants to die in a bed, not on a sidewalk. "It's all yours, Al," he says. Just like that, the keys to the kingdom are tossed into your lap. Historians still argue whether Torrio truly lost his nerve, or if this was the most brilliant strategic exit in criminal history. He would go on to live until 1957, dying of a heart attack in a barber's chair. A peaceful end that almost no other gangster from this era achieved. But for you, his exit is the starting gun. It represents a seismic shift. You are 26 years old. Think about what you were doing at 26. Maybe trying to pay off student loans. Maybe figuring out how to cook pasta without it sticking. Al Capone at 26 is now the CEO of a criminal conglomerate generating millions of dollars a month. You have inherited breweries, distilleries, speakeasies, brothels, gambling dens, and a small army of gunmen. You decide immediately that you are not going to be the quiet, shadow-dwelling boss that Torrio was. You are going to be loud. You move the headquarters out of the grimy Four Deuces and into the Metropole Hotel on South Michigan Avenue. This isn't a hideout, it's a palace. You rent a 5-room suite for $1,500 a day. That's nearly $26,000 a day in modern cash. You are spending more on rent in a week than most honest men earn in a decade. You start dressing the part. Gone are the rough clothes of a bouncer. You adopt the look that will define the gangster aesthetic for a century. Custom-tailored suits in electric blues, banana yellows and violet. Diamond pinky rings. A white fedora angled just so. You earn a new nickname among your friends. Snorky. In the slang of the 1920s, it means sharp, well-dressed, elegant. You want the world to see you not as a thug, but as a businessman providing a public service. But with the wardrobe change comes a policy change. Torrio believed in sharing. You believe in winning. You look at the map of Chicago, at the territories held by the Irish Northsiders and the smaller independent gangs, and you see inefficiencies. You see lost revenue. The truce is over. You are going to bring the entire city under the umbrella of the Chicago outfit, or you are going to burn it down trying. This brings us to a bizarre reality of your new life, the sheer volume of cash. You are suddenly managing an economy larger than some small nations. The money comes in dirty, literally. Small bills, crumpled, smelling of beer and sweat, hauled in laundry bags and fruit crates. You have to hire teams of counters just to stack it. You start looking at the suburbs, specifically a town called Cicero, as a place where you can really stretch your legs without the Chicago police breathing down your neck every 5 minutes. However, being the boss means you inherit the enemies too. The Northsiders haven't forgotten about Torrio. Now that he's gone, their crosshairs move directly to your forehead. You realize that to survive, you need to be more than just a bootlegger. You need political cover. You need a base of operations where the law isn't just bought, but owned. You set your sights on the town of Cicero, just bordering Chicago. It's a working-class industrial hub, full of factories and hard-working immigrants who like a drink after a shift. It's perfect. But the local government there isn't quite ready to hand over the keys to a 26-year-old ex-bouncer with a scar on his face. They want an election. They want democracy. You, on the other hand, find democracy to be terribly inconvenient. As you settle into your plush suite at the Metropole, lighting a thick cigar and looking out over the skyline that is now effectively yours, a plan forms in your mind. If you can conquer Cicero, you'll have a fortress. But to get it, you're going to have to show the world that snorky Capone isn't just a well-dressed businessman. You're going to have to show them the monster that lives beneath the silk suit. And trust me, the good people of Cicero have absolutely no idea what's about to hit them. But here's where things get strange. Usually, when you want to rig an election, you do it quietly, with stuffed ballot boxes and dead people voting by mail. But you decide that subtlety is for people who can't afford machine guns. You treat the democratic process less like a civic duty and more like a hostile takeover of a hostile nation. It is April 1st, 1924. April Fool's Day, ironically enough. You have decided that the town of Cicero must belong to you. You need the Republican candidate, Joseph Klena, to win. Not because you are a staunch conservative, but because Klena is in your pocket. If he wins, the police force belongs to you, the city council belongs to you, and the entire town becomes a safe zone for your breweries and gambling dens. But the Democrats are putting up a fight, and there's a risk, however slight, that the voters might actually try to vote their conscience. You can't have that. So, you unleash an invasion force. You don't just send a few guys to hand out flyers. You send 200 armed thugs into Cicero. Imagine looking out your window on a Tuesday morning and seeing a convoy of black sedans rolling down Main Street, filled with men in trench coats holding sawed-off shotguns. This isn't voter outreach. It's an occupation. You set up your headquarters in the storefront of a diner. Your brother, Frank Capone, who everyone says is the mild-mannered one, the diplomat of the family, is leading the charge on the street. You also have your other brother, Ralph Bottles Capone, managing the logistics. The goal is simple. Any voter who looks like they might vote for the Democrats gets discouraged. And by discouraged, I mean physically assaulted. Your men are standing outside polling stations, asking people who they're voting for. If they give the wrong answer, the voting booth is suddenly closed, and the voter is tossed into the back of a car and driven to a basement until the polls close. In some precincts, your men simply take the ballot boxes, empty them out on the street, and stuff them with pre-marked ballots for Klena. It's brutal, it's loud, and it's happening in broad daylight. At one point, a Democratic campaign worker named Michael Gavin gets shot through both legs. Another official has his throat cut. Citizens are terrified. The local Cicero police are nowhere to be found, because of course, you've already paid them to take a very long lunch break. The chaos is so absolute that the Cook County judge in Chicago gets frantic calls from Cicero citizens begging for help. He can't send the National Guard in time, so he does something unprecedented. He deputizes 70 Chicago police officers, puts them in plain clothes, and sends them to Cicero in unmarked cars, with orders to shoot to kill if necessary. They aren't there to arrest people. They are there to start a war. This leads to the moment that will harden your heart forever. Your brother Frank is walking down the street near a polling place. He's smiling. Things are going well. He spots a car pulling up. He thinks it's more of your boys. He walks over, maybe to ask for a light or to check in. But the men inside aren't your boys. They are the Chicago Police Squad, led by Sergeant William Cusack. Historians still argue whether Frank Capone actually reached for his gun. The police report claims Frank drew a revolver, forcing them to fire in self-defense. However, eyewitnesses and your own camp claim Frank was reaching into his pocket for a handkerchief, or perhaps to show a badge, thinking they were fellow gangsters. It doesn't matter now. The police open fire with shotguns and pistols. Frank is riddled with bullets. He hits the sidewalk, dead before he stops moving. You are nearby when you hear the news. The mild brother, the one you loved, is gone. You go into a rage that is terrifying to behold. You want to burn the city down. You want to kill every cop in Illinois. But Torrio's training kicks in, just barely. You realize that if you go to war with the Chicago police now, you lose everything. You have to swallow the bile. You have to focus on the objective. And the objective is won. Despite the bloodshed, or perhaps because of it, Clenna wins the election. Cicero is yours. You throw Frank a funeral that rivals a state burial for a king. The flowers alone cost $20,000. You ban music in your gambling halls for a week out of respect. But underneath the grief, you have secured your fortress. You are now the Lord of Cicero. You walk the streets like a feudal baron. But there is a problem. Your puppet mayor, Joseph Clenna, starts to get a little big for his britches. Maybe he thinks that because he's the mayor, he actually runs the town. He starts making minor decisions without consulting you. He forgets who put him in that chair and who kept the other guy out of it. So, one afternoon, you decide to pay a visit to City Hall. This is a scene straight out of a movie, but it happened. You walk right past the secretary, kick open the doors to the council chamber, and march up to the mayor's desk. Clenna looks up, trembling. He knows he's messed up. You grab the mayor of Cicero by his lapels, drag him out of his chair, and proceed to slap him. Not a punch, a slap. It's insulting. It's parental. You drag him out into the hallway and literally kick him down the stairs of City Hall. As he tumbles, bruising his ribs and his ego, a police officer stands at the bottom of the steps. The officer looks at the mayor tumbling towards him, looks up at you dusting off your hands, and simply steps aside to let the mayor roll past. That is power. You look down at the whimpering elected official and shout, "You stick to your business, and I'll stick to mine." The message is received loud and clear. From that day forward, the town council doesn't pass a zoning law or approve a permit without your nod. Cicero becomes the engine room of your empire. With the police and government completely owned, you can build the infrastructure of industrial-scale crime. You no longer have to hide your breweries in basements or behind false walls. In Cicero, you can practically put a neon sign on them. You set up headquarters at the Hawthorne Hotel, later the Hawthorne Inn, turning it into a fortress with bulletproof shutters and armed guards in the lobby. It's here that you will really begin to make the kind of money that attracts the IRS. You also start to realize that owning a town attracts a different kind of attention. The good people of the reform movement in Chicago are looking at Cicero with horror. You are dubbed the Scarface of Cicero. The press is eating it up. You are becoming a household name, not just a shadowy figure. But you don't care about the bad press yet. You care about the logistics. Now that you have a safe haven, you need to scale up. You need to turn the trickle of bootleg liquor into a tsunami. You need to figure out how to brew thousands of gallons of beer a day, transport it into the thirsty heart of Chicago, and distribute it to thousands of speakeasies without losing a drop to hijackers or the few honest cops left. You sit in your suite at the Hawthorne, listening to the jazz coming from the radio, and you sketch out the supply chain. It's not enough to just steal booze anymore. You have to manufacture it. You are about to become the Henry Ford of alcohol. And just like Ford, you're going to need an assembly line that never stops. But here's where things get strange. The biggest threat to your empire isn't a federal agent with a badge. It's the inescapable, yeasty aroma of baking bread. See, you can bribe a police captain to look the other way, and you can terrify a witness into silence. But you cannot bribe the physics of fermentation. Brewing beer and distilling spirits on an industrial scale produces a smell, a thick, pungent, sour-sweet odor of mash that hangs in the humid Chicago air like a heavy blanket. If you are cooking alcohol, everyone within a 3-block radius knows it. So, how do you hide a factory that smells like a bakery exploded inside a locker room? You get creative with your real estate. You don't just rent a basement, you rent the world around it. You start leasing warehouses under the guise of businesses that are supposed to smell terrible. A glue factory, a varnish plant, a commercial laundry using harsh chemicals, or even a fertilizer depot. If the neighbors complain about the smell, you just point to the sign on the door that says, Acme Industrial Solvents, and tell them to take it up with the city. Meanwhile, inside, hidden behind false walls and stacks of empty crates, are copper stills the size of locomotives, hissing and bubbling away, turning sugar and corn into liquid gold. Welcome to the mechanics of industrial bootlegging. This isn't a couple of hillbillies making moonshine in a bathtub. This is the General Motors of vice. You are overseeing a manufacturing sector that rivals legitimate heavy industry. You have to source the raw materials, literal tons of sugar, crates of yeast, and bushels of corn. You can't just walk into a grocery store and buy 500 pounds of sugar without raising eyebrows. So, you set up front companies, bakeries that don't bake, candy shops that never open, just to create a paper trail for the raw ingredients. But brewing beer takes time and space. It needs to age, even if only for a few days. The quicker profit, and the more dangerous game, is the alky cooking. This involves cleaning industrial alcohol. The government, in a desperate attempt to stop people from drinking, requires that all industrial alcohol, used for paints, perfumes, and fuels, be denatured or poisoned. They add wood alcohol, iodine, kerosene, or even formaldehyde to make it undrinkable. Your chemists, yes, you employ actual chemists, have to figure out how to wash this poison out. They use a process called renaturing. They boil the industrial sludge, filter it through charcoal, and try to distill out the toxins. The result is a clear, burning liquid that is technically potable, though it tastes like jet fuel. To make it palatable, your boys mix it with water, glycerin, and juniper oil to create gin, or caramel color and creosote to create bourbon. Here is a dark reality check. You probably won't survive this if you are the customer. If your chemists get the math wrong, or if they rush the batch because demand is high, the wood alcohol stays in. This leads to blindness, paralysis, or death. There is a terrifying condition called Jake leg, a permanent paralysis of the feet and ankles caused by bad bootleg liquor. But you, sitting in your office in Cicero, aren't drinking this swill. You import the real stuff from Canada for your own glass. The alky cookers are making product for the masses, and the masses don't seem to care about the risk as long as it gives them a buzz. Historians still argue whether the infamous phrase, Capone's beer is good beer, was actually a reflection of quality or just successful branding. Some sources claim you prided yourself on having better safety standards than the frantic independent cookers, ensuring your chemists actually removed the blindness-inducing toxins. Others say you pumped out whatever sludge would burn, and the quality was just a myth generated by the fact that your supply was the only one consistent enough to be branded. Once the booze is cooked, you face the logistical nightmare of needle beer. This is where you take legal near beer, the non-alcoholic stuff breweries are still allowed to make, and you inject it with ether or industrial alcohol to give it a kick. It's a tedious process involving syringes and kegs, performed by armies of workers in damp warehouses. It's assembly line work, repetitive and dull, but it turns a 50-cent barrel into a $50 profit center. Now, you have the product. You have thousands of gallons of beer and spirits sitting in Cicero. How do you get it to the speakeasies in downtown Chicago without getting hijacked by the Northsiders? You build a fleet. You buy trucks, big, heavy-duty delivery trucks. But you don't just drive them. You armor them. You reinforce the cabs with steel plates. You install drop boxes in the floorboards so cash can be hidden instantly. You organize convoys. A typical run involves a pilot car out front, usually a fast sedan driven by a guy who knows the roads perfectly. He scouts for police roadblocks or rival gangs. Then comes the load, the truck full of barrels. Behind it is the tail car, filled with men holding Thompson's submachine guns. If a rival gang tries to hijack the truck, the tail car pulls up and unleashes hell. It's a military operation on the streets of Illinois. And let's not forget the protection. You aren't just dodging the police. Often you are employing them. It is a mainstream historical fact that uniformed police officers frequently rode shotgun on your beer trucks. Imagine being a citizen, watching a beer truck rumble past and seeing a cop sitting next to the driver, waving traffic aside to ensure the illegal contraband gets to the bar on time. You pay these officers more in a week than the city pays them in a month. In your ledger, this isn't bribery. It's just a shipping and handling fee. But sometimes the roads are too hot. This leads to one of the quirky, fringe tidbits of your operation, the underground tunnels. In parts of Chicago and connected suburbs, you utilize old coal delivery tunnels and steam tunnels to move product beneath the feet of the unsuspecting public. There are rumors of a tunnel directly connecting a brewery to a speakeasy across the street, using a pneumatic tube system to shoot bottles over like bank deposits. While some of these tunnel stories are tall tales, the infrastructure of the city, the sewers, the coal chutes, becomes a subterranean highway for your liquid assets. The sheer volume is staggering. You are moving tens of thousands of gallons a week. You have cutting plants, where the alcohol is diluted, bottling plants, where fake labels, printed to look like high-end Scotch or French champagne, are slapped onto bottles of rot gut, and drops, where the product is transferred to smaller cars for city delivery. You are also an employer of massive proportions. You don't just hire thugs, you hire coopers to fix barrels, mechanics to service the trucks, glass blowers, printers for the fake labels, and accountants to track the inventory. You are stimulating the local economy more effectively than the actual government. During the Depression, which is creeping closer, a job with the outfit is the most secure employment in town. But managing this supply chain is exhausting. You are constantly on the phone, tracking shipments, dealing with a batch that went sour, or handling a truck that got hit by hijackers. You realize that making the alcohol is only half the battle. The real trick is getting it into the glasses of the customer. You have the factory, and you have the transport. Now, you need the retail outlets. You need the places where the jazz is hot, the lights are low, and the people are thirsty. You look at the map of Chicago again. Every neighborhood needs a watering hole, and you are going to make sure that every single one of them pours your beer, pays your prices, and kicks back a percentage to the boss. The factory whistle is blown. Now it's time to open the doors to the night. But here's where things get strange. The most exclusive club in town might be hidden behind a refrigerator door in a delicatessen, and the password is usually something incredibly creative like, "Joe sent me." Welcome to the retail side of your empire. You've brewed the beer in Cicero, you've trucked it through the gauntlet of hijackers, and now it flows into the veins of the city. Chicago isn't just thirsty, it is parched. They call it the wettest city in America, a title you have personally helped secure. While the rest of the country is pretending to be dry, Chicago has an estimated 10,000 to 20,000 speakeasies operating at full blast. That's 2 speakeasies for every honest church, and frankly, the attendance is better at your establishments. You don't own all of them. That would be a management nightmare. But you own the taps. You are the exclusive distributor for a vast network of buffet flats, blind pigs, and high-end cabarets. The deal is simple. The bar owner buys your beer at your price. If they complain that the beer is mostly foam and needle-spiked near beer, you remind them that the alternative is a smashed storefront and a broken arm. Suddenly, the beer tastes just fine. Imagine walking into one of these joints. From the street, it looks like a funeral home or a quiet soda shop. But you know the drill. You tap on a heavy oak door. A sliding peephole opens. A pair of suspicious eyes scans you. You slip a $5 bill through the slot, or whisper the name of a local precinct captain. The door swings open, and you are hit with a wall of noise. Frantic jazz, the clinking of glass, and the roar of laughter. Inside, the social rules of the Victorian era are being shredded. This is one of the unintended consequences of the moral crusade you profit from. In the old days, saloons were male-only spaces where men spat tobacco and talked politics. Now, women are here. Flappers with bobbed hair and short skirts are dancing the Charleston, drinking gin cocktails right alongside the men. Historians still argue whether prohibition actually sparked a liberation of women's social habits, reasoning that by making alcohol illegal, it became a forbidden fruit that made drinking rebellious and chic rather than unladylike. For you, it just means the customer base has doubled. You aren't a sociologist, you're a capitalist. If the ladies want gin, the ladies get gin. You also profit from another social shift. The black and tan clubs. In your territory, specifically on the south side, segregation is breaking down, not because of high-minded ideals, but because of the music. White folks from the suburbs are flocking to the south side to hear Louis Armstrong and King Oliver blow their horns. The jazz is hot, the atmosphere is electric, and the money is all the same color. You love the jazz musicians. In fact, you have a soft spot for them. You're known to tip a band $100 just to play Rhapsody in Blue or a sentimental opera tune. You even kidnapped, well, borrowed, the famous pianist Fats Waller once to play at your birthday party. He was terrified until he realized the hit was actually a gig, and he went home with pockets stuffed with cash. But running these places requires a special kind of interior design. You help your clients install drop shelves behind the bars. If the cops, the ones you haven't paid off, come busting in with axes, the bartender hits a button. The shelves behind the bar collapse backward, dumping the bottles down a chute into the basement, where they smash into a pit of sand or flow into the sewer. By the time the coppers jump over the bar, there's nothing but the smell of spilled revenue and an innocent-looking bartender wiping down a dry counter. Of course, not every joint is a high-class cabaret. You also supply the smoke shops and the dives. In these places, the gin is often served warm in coffee mugs to hide it. The air is so thick with cigar smoke, you could cut it with a knife and serve it on a cracker. Here, the desperate and the destitute drink your cheapest rot gut. It's grim, but their dimes stack up just as high as the bankers' dollars. You, however, prefer the Metropole or the Hawthorne. You hold court at a corner table, your back to the wall, always back to the wall, flanked by bodyguards. You buy rounds for the house. You smile that thick-lipped, scarred smile. You want them to love you, and they do. To the patrons, you aren't a criminal, you're a provider. You're the guy who keeps the party going when the government wants to turn off the lights. You are the lord of misrule. But maintaining this monopoly requires constant vigilance. The beer wars are real. Rival gangs try to muscle in on your speakeasies. They might hijack a delivery and replace your beer with their own. This is the ultimate insult. When you find a bar owner who has switched suppliers, You don't sue them for breach of contract. You send a committee. This usually involves a pineapple, the slang for a hand grenade, tossed through the front window at 3 a.m. It's a loud, messy way to renegotiate the terms of service. Or you use the Alky Cooker's Special, a mixture of creosote and bulb acid thrown onto the furniture. The smell is so vile and impossible to remove that the owner has to burn the furniture and gut the place. They usually switch back to your beer pretty quickly after that. One quirky fringe tidbit you might not expect. The speakeasy boom created a massive demand for finger food. Since people were drinking on empty stomachs and getting sloshed too fast, which is bad for longevity and avoiding fights, bar owners started serving small, salty snacks to soak up the booze. The cocktail weenie and finger sandwiches became staples. You are inadvertently fueling the appetizer industry. As you sit in the smoky haze of a Saturday night, watching the flappers spin and the champagne flow, which is actually just carbonated white wine with a fancy label, you realize something crucial. Alcohol is great. It's a steady earner, but it has overhead. You have to make it, move it, and hide it. It takes up space. It smells. You look across the room at a table where men are huddled over cards, stacks of cash changing hands with every flip. You look at the corner where a roulette wheel is spinning, the little ivory ball rattling like a tiny machine gun. That is pure profit. No trucks, no brewing, no smell. Just math and greed. You realize that while booze makes you popular, gambling makes you rich. And if you can control the racetracks, the dice games, and the numbers racket, you won't just be the king of Chicago, you'll be the bank. And as everyone knows, the house doesn't just win, the house owns the game. But here's where things get strange. You can hijack a truck full of whiskey and lose half the bottles to breakage, or get the whole thing confiscated by a zealous Fed. But you can never, ever confiscate a losing bet. You are sitting in the back office of your headquarters, looking at the ledger. The beer business is booming, yes, but it's a headache. It requires fleets of trucks, armies of drivers, and warehouses that smell like a frat house basement. It's physically exhausting. Then you look at the numbers coming in from the green tables. It's pure, clean, unadulterated profit. There is no product to manufacture. There is no inventory to rot. There is just human hope, mathematically dismantled by the house edge. You realize that while alcohol gets people in the door, gambling is what empties their pockets. And unlike booze, which makes customers rowdy and unpredictable, gambling puts them in a trance. They sit there, watching the wheels spin, watching the dice tumble, hypnotized by the possibility of easy money, while you rake in the actual easy money. You decide to industrialize this too. You aren't content with just a few poker tables in the back of a speakeasy. You want casinos. In Cicero, you open places like The Ship, a massive gambling hall that operates with the brazen openness of a public library. The police don't raid the Ship. They provide traffic control out front because the double-parked cars are blocking the street. Inside, it's a wonderland of vice. Roulette, craps, faro, blackjack. The air is cool and smells of expensive cigars. The chips click like a swarm of cicadas. But your true masterpiece isn't a card table. It's a track. You look at the world of horse racing. It's aristocratic. It's expensive. It's controlled by the old money elites who look down on a Brooklyn boy like you. So, you look for an alternative. You find it in greyhounds. Dog racing. It's faster, cheaper to operate, and appeals to the working man who can't afford a day at the equestrian club. It is the sport of queens to horse racing's sport of kings. You pour money into the Hawthorne Kennel Club in Cicero. This isn't a dirt patch, it's a stadium. You install lights for night racing, a novelty that allows the factory workers to come and lose their wages after their shift ends. You build a grandstand that seats thousands. You create a spectacle. And the best part? Dogs are easier to fix than horses. A horse has a jockey, a trainer, an owner. Too many people to bribe. A greyhound just has a handler and a mechanical rabbit. You learn the tricks of the trade fast. You can overfeed a favorite dog right before the race so he's sluggish. You can give a long shot a little pep talk in the form of cocaine or caffeine. Or, in a pinch, you can manipulate the mechanical rabbit. If the rabbit slows down, the dogs get confused. If it speeds up, only the fittest, or the most doped, can keep up. There is a mainstream historical fact here that is staggering. The Hawthorne Kennel Club was so successful that it allegedly brought in $50,000 on opening night alone. In today's money, that is roughly $880,000 in one night. And you didn't have to brew a single drop of beer to get it. But you don't stop at the tracks. You want to control the information flow. This brings us to the wire service. In the 1920s, before the internet or live TV, bookies across the country needed to know the results of horse races instantly to pay out winners, or to stop taking bets on a race that had already finished. You partner with men like Moses Annenberg to control the telegraph wires. This is the internet of the era. If you own the wire, you own the truth. This allows for the legendary scam known as past posting. Here is how it works, and it is beautiful in its simplicity. Your man at the track signals the winner the second the race ends. You delay the official telegraph message to the bookies by just a few minutes. In that tiny window of time, your agents, knowing the winner, place massive bets on the horse that has already won. Then, the wire updates, the bookie gets the result, and he has to pay out. It's insider trading, but with ponies. Historians still argue whether the gambling revenue actually eclipsed the bootlegging revenue during the mid to late 1920s. The popular image of Capone is a man holding a Tommy gun and a beer barrel, but the forensic accounting suggests he was just as much a casino mogul. Some economic historians suggest that because gambling had almost zero cost of goods sold, COGS, the profit margins were infinitely higher than alcohol, making it the true engine of the outfit's wealth. You also delve into the numbers racket. This is the poor man's lottery. In the African-American neighborhoods of the South Side and the immigrant tenements, people bet pennies and nickels on a daily 3-digit number. The number might be the last 3 digits of the daily racetrack handle, or the stock market clearinghouse total. It seems like small potatoes, nickels and dimes, but when you have 100,000 people betting a nickel every day, the mountain of change becomes an avalanche of cash. And the beauty of the numbers racket? It's mathematically rigged. The payout is usually 600 to 1, but the odds of hitting the number are 1,000 to 1. You pocket the difference. It is a tax on hope, collected daily by your runners. However, running these gambling dens requires a different kind of security. You aren't guarding against hijackers on the highway. You are guarding against cheaters and sore losers. You install coolers, men whose only job is to stand in the corner, looking intimidating, ensuring that if someone loses their rent money, they don't flip the table. You also have to deal with the mechanics, the card sharps and dice sliders who try to cheat. You have zero tolerance for this. If you catch a cheat in one of your joints, you don't call the police. You take them into the back alley. A broken hand is a very effective deterrent against palming an ace in the future. One quirky fringe tidbit about your gambling empire involves the goldfish bowl trick. In some of your higher-end establishments, it's rumored you kept a bowl of goldfish near the entrance. If a known police officer or a federal agent walked in, one you hadn't bribed, the doorman would knock the bowl over. The commotion of flopping fish and shattered glass gave the patrons inside just enough time to hide the dice and pull out the reserved signs on the tables, turning the gambling den into a quiet social club before the cops could get through the door. You are riding high. The cash from the tracks and the tables is effectively laundering the dirty money from the booze. You can claim the income comes from gambling winnings, which, while still legally gray, is easier to explain than illegal alcohol sales. You feel invincible. You are the bank. But as you stack the chips and count the bills, you know that there are deeper, darker ways to make money. Vices that people don't talk about in polite society, even in the roaring 20s. The gambling is clean. It's just math. But the next revenue stream? It's flesh. It's exploitation, and it's going to take you down into the grime of the city in a way that even you, with your calloused conscience, might find hard to wash off. You look at the bottom line. It's not enough. It's never enough. You signal to your driver. It's time to tour the Levee District, where the lights are red and the morals are loose. But here's where things get strange. The same man who is currently buying tickets to the opera and insisting that his beer is safe for the working man is also the CEO of a business so grimy that even other criminals look down on it. You are standing in the lobby of a resort, a polite euphemism for a brothel, and you are realizing that while gambling is about math, this business is about misery. You have to remember where you came from. Before the beer trucks and the dog tracks, your organization was built on the backs of women. Big Jim Colosimo was the king of the pimp game. When you inherited the empire, you didn't just inherit the guns, you inherited the girls. And being the efficient capitalist you are, you didn't shut it down, you expanded it. You operate a network of bordellos that range from the high-end parlor houses to the wretched cribs near the stockyards. In the parlor houses, men in tuxedos drink champagne and listen to a player piano before heading upstairs. The furniture is velvet, the lighting is dim, and the illusion of romance is sold for a high premium. It's almost respectable, in a twisted Victorian sort of way. But down in the cribs, it's an assembly line. This is the Ford Motor Company of Vice. You charge 50 cents or $1. The turnover is rapid. There is no champagne, just the smell of cheap disinfectant and desperation. You look at the ledger, and you see that while the individual transaction fee is low, the volume is astronomical. It's the microtransaction model of the 1920s. You try to run this with the same cold efficiency as your breweries. You implement a system of rotation. You move women from house to house, city to city, to keep the inventory fresh for the customers. It is dehumanizing, it is cruel, and it is incredibly profitable. You treat human beings like crates of beer, assets to be managed, transported, and exploited until they expire. And you make sure the police get their cut here too. A raid on a brothel is bad for business, not because of the arrests, the girls are bailed out in an hour, but because it scares away the shy customers. So you pay the precinct captains to keep the paddy wagons away. Or, if a raid is politically necessary to satisfy the moral uplift societies, you get tipped off in advance. The police arrive, the house is dark, and the only thing they find is a few guys playing pinochle in the parlor. However, there is a physical cost to this business that you know all too well. Syphilis, gonorrhea, the French pox. In an era before penicillin, these aren't just inconveniences, they are death sentences carried out in slow motion. You, Al Capone, are not immune. It is a mainstream historical fact that you contracted syphilis at a very young age, likely back in Brooklyn or during your early days in Chicago. It is currently dormant in your system, hiding in your blood, waiting to eventually eat away at your brain. But for now, you act as the public health commissioner of the underworld. You insist on regular medical exams for the women in your houses. This isn't out of the kindness of your heart. You aren't a feminist icon. You do it because a sick girl can't work, and a customer who gets sick might go to the police or, worse, stop spending money. You employ doctors on the payroll, shady characters who lost their licenses, or just like the easy cash, to perform weekly inspections. It's quality control, pure and simple. But let's be real. You probably won't survive this if you catch what's going around. The treatments in the 1920s are horrifying. Doctors inject mercury or arsenic compounds into your veins. There's a saying, one night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury. You might cure the infection, but your teeth fall out and your kidneys shut down from the heavy metal poisoning. It's a toss-up whether the disease or the cure kills you first. Historians still argue whether you personally oversaw the vice operations during the height of your power, or if you delegated it entirely to your brother Ralph and other underlings because you were ashamed of it. Some evidence suggests you wanted to be seen as a bootlegger, a Robin Hood figure providing a service people actually wanted, rather than a pimp, which even in the criminal underworld carried a stigma. You wanted the public to love you, and nobody loves a flesh peddler. Yet the money was too good to turn off. The ledgers don't lie, and the ledgers show the brothels pumping cash into the outfit's veins every single night. You also have a specific taste in these establishments. You maintain a headquarters at the Metropole, but you also keep a suite at the Lexington Hotel. You have tunnels and secret passages installed here too. But the vice isn't just about sex. It's about the atmosphere of total lawlessness. It's about creating spaces where the rules of civilization are suspended. In these dark corners, you also run into the opium dens and the cocaine trade. While you publicly claim to hate narcotics, calling them un-American and dirty, you aren't above letting others sell them in your territory for a tax. You are a hypocrite, but a wealthy one. You draw a line in the sand. You won't become a drug kingpin, but you'll happily be the landlord for one. This dark underbelly brings you into contact with the absolute dregs of society. You see the politicians who preach morality from the pulpit on Sunday sneaking into your houses on Tuesday night. You see the judges who sentence men to prison for theft, paying for time with women who are effectively prisoners of your organization. It creates a cynical shell around your soul. You realize that everyone has a price, and everyone has a vice. You are just the guy honest enough to put a price tag on it. One quirky fringe tidbit about your vice empire involves the sheer amount of laundry it generated. Think about it. Thousands of customers, thousands of beds, thousands of sheets and towels. The hygiene requirements, such as they were, meant you had a mountain of linen to wash every single day. The legitimate commercial laundries were charging you a fortune and asking too many questions about the suspicious stains. So you start looking at the laundry trucks driving around the city. You see another industry that is fragmented, competitive, and ripe for a takeover. You realize that if you control the laundry, you not only wash your own dirty sheets for free, but you can also hold the entire city's hygiene hostage. You sit in the plush velvet armchair of a parlor house, listening to the player piano dink out a sad tune. You watch the guests shuffle up the stairs. You feel the itch of the dormant disease in your own blood, a reminder of the cost of doing business. You drink a glass of your own imported whiskey to numb the thought. The vice rackets are steady, but they are dirty. They make you feel like you need a shower that never ends. But as you watch the laundry truck pull up to the back door to collect the soiled linens, a light bulb goes on in that scarred head of yours. You've conquered the beer, the gambling, and the women. Why not conquer the cleaning? You stand up, brushing the ash from your silk lapel. You are done with the dark rooms and the cheap perfume for tonight. It's time to step out into the fresh air and muscle your way into a business that is supposed to be squeaky clean. But here's where things get strange. You are about to become the most aggressive dry cleaner in American history, and you are going to discover that a crisp, white shirt can be just as dangerous as a loaded pistol if you control who washes it. You are looking at the Chicago skyline, but you aren't looking at the banks or the jewelry stores. You are looking at the small, boring storefronts, the mom-and-pop shops, the dry cleaners, the linen services, the garages, the bakeries. To the average criminal, these are pennies. To you, the CEO of the outfit, they represent steady, recurring revenue. You realize that vice is optional. People don't have to gamble, and they don't have to visit a brothel, but everybody needs clean clothes. This is the birth of the protection racket on an industrial scale. You aren't just robbing these businesses, you are forcibly partnering with them. You create trade associations. It sounds very corporate, doesn't it? You set up the Sanitary Cleaning Shops, Inc., and you invite every independent laundry owner in Chicago to join. The sales pitch is simple. Join our association, pay an initiation fee and weekly dues, and we will guarantee that your prices stay high and your competition stays away. If a laundry owner says, "No thanks, I'm happy charging lower prices to get more customers," you don't take it well. You see, that's unfair competition. So you send the boys around to explain the economics of the situation. This brings us to the laundry wars. It sounds ridiculous, like a slapstick comedy, but it is terrifyingly real. You employ a specific tactic to motivate the reluctant joiners, the stink bomb. But these aren't the little glass vials kids throw in school hallways. These are industrial-grade chemical weapons. Your chemists mix butyric acid and other foul compounds into a sludge that smells like a combination of rotting corpses, vomit, and sulfur. Your men break into a non-compliant laundry at night and pour this sludge into the vats of cleaning fluid. Or, more insidiously, they sew tiny glass vials of the stuff into the linings of the clothes waiting to be pressed. When the unsuspecting presser brings the heavy steam iron down, crack, hiss. The vial shatters, the heat vaporizes the chemical, and the entire shop is filled with a stench so unholy that it permeates the walls. The clothes are ruined, the customers are furious, the shop has to close for weeks to fumigate. Suddenly, the weekly dues to your association seem like a bargain. You also use polling. This involves a truckload of your goons pulling up to a laundry, marching in with iron bars, and smashing every machine in sight. They tip over the dye vats, smash the presses, and beat the owner. It is brutal, primitive, and effective. Within months, the price of dry cleaning in Chicago skyrockets. You are essentially taxing the cleanliness of the city. Every time a lawyer, a doctor, or a factory worker puts on a fresh shirt, they are paying a few cents to Al Capone. Historians still argue whether the term money laundering actually originated with you. The popular legend is that because you purchase so many laundromats to mix your dirty bootlegging cash with legitimate business revenue, the term was coined to describe your financial hygiene. However, linguistic scholars point out that the phrase money laundering didn't appear in print until the Watergate scandal in the 1970s. So, while you definitely did launder money through laundromats, you probably never used the phrase yourself. You just called it business. But you don't stop at the owners. You want to control the workers too. You set your sights on the labor unions, the Teamsters, the chauffeurs, the plumbers. In the 1920s, unions are fighting for their lives against greedy corporations. They are tough, often violent organizations. They need muscle. You have muscle to spare. You start by offering your services to a union leader. Need help winning a strike? You ask. We can make sure the scab workers don't cross the picket line. Your boys show up with baseball bats and ensure the strike is effective. But once the strike is won, you don't leave. You demand a seat at the table. You force the union to elect one of your men as a business agent. Once you are inside the union, you own the city's infrastructure. You can shut down the entire trucking industry with a single phone call. This gives you leverage over every business in Chicago. If a department store refuses to pay your protection money, suddenly the delivery drivers refuse to deliver their goods. The garbage collectors refuse to pick up their trash. The coal drivers refuse to bring fuel for their furnaces. You can strangle a business without ever firing a shot. This is racketeering in its purest form. You are selling insurance against accidents that you cause. It is a closed loop of extortion. And the money? It is staggering. It is estimated that the racketeering profits eventually rival the alcohol profits. And unlike alcohol, this income is much harder for the feds to trace because it looks like legitimate union dues and business fees. You are also getting involved in the dairy business. This is a quirky fringe tidbit that sounds fake, but you are surprisingly passionate about it. You notice that milk has a high markup and everyone buys it. You muscle into the milk wagon drivers union. But you also notice something that annoys you. The milk spoils. There is a persistent legend that you, Al Capone, are the reason we have expiration dates on milk bottles. The story goes that your family got sick from bad milk, so you used your muscle to force the dairy industry to stamp sell-by dates on the bottles for safety. Whether that's altruism or just you wanting to protect your new investment product, nobody buys sour milk twice. It shows your mindset. You are trying to normalize. You want to be a tycoon, not just a gangster. You want to be the man who brings the milk and cleans the shirts. But this expansion comes with a new level of visibility. You aren't just fighting rival gangs anymore. You are fighting the fabric of the economy. The merchants you are squeezing are complaining. They are writing letters to the newspapers. The Secret Six, a group of wealthy Chicago businessmen, formed specifically to combat your stranglehold on commerce. They realize that you aren't just a colorful outlaw providing booze. You are a parasite eating the city's profit margins. You, however, feel justified. In your mind, you are providing order. Before you, the laundry industry was chaotic, with price wars and instability. Now, prices are fixed, high, territories are respected, or else, and everyone makes money, mostly you. You view yourself as a stabilizer, a regulator in a deregulated world. But let's be real, you probably won't survive this if you are a small business owner in Cicero or Chicago. You have two choices: pay the snorky tax, or watch your life's work go up in smoke, or down the drain in a wave of acid. As you sit in your office, signing checks for the sanitary cleaning shops, you look at your hands. They are manicured, clean, soft. You haven't had to throw a punch in a long time. You have people for that. You have systems for that. You have built a machine that runs on fear and generates cash. But a machine needs oil, and in your world, oil is made of bribes. You have the businesses in a chokehold, but to keep the grip tight, you need to make sure the police and the judges are looking the other way. You need to ensure that when a laundry owner runs to the precinct to report a bombing, the sergeant at the desk just shrugs and loses the paperwork. You've conquered the streets, the speakeasies, and the shops. Now, you have to buy the law itself. And lucky for you, in 1920s Chicago, justice is on sale, and it's surprisingly affordable. But here's where things get strange. In your ledger, the column marked graft is actually larger than the column marked barley or hops, and you treat the mayor of Chicago not as a terrifying authority figure, but as an expensive employee who occasionally needs a bonus. You are looking at the operating expenses of the outfit. It is estimated that you are spending upwards of $500,000 a week. Yes, a week, on bribes. In today's money, that is nearly $9 million handed out in cash every 7 days, just to keep the wheels greased. You aren't just paying for silence, you are paying for active participation. You have realized that the law isn't a solid wall, it's a menu, and everything on it has a price tag. Let's calculate the cost of a city. At the bottom of the food chain, you have the beat cop. He's easy. He makes a pittance, maybe $2,000 a year legitimately. You slip him 10 or 20 bucks a week and suddenly, he develops a very selective form of blindness. If he sees a beer truck unloading at a speakeasy, he suddenly finds his shoelaces are incredibly fascinating and require his immediate attention. This is the subscription model of bribery. It's low cost, high volume. It ensures that the streets remain permeable. But you can't run an empire on beat cops alone. You need the brass. A police captain costs significantly more, perhaps a few $1,000s a month, but he controls the rosters. He decides where the raids happen, and more importantly, where they don't happen. If the temperance groups demand a crackdown, the captain calls you first. You agree on a throwaway joint, a low-performing speakeasy with a few empty barrels and a bartender you were planning to fire anyway. The police raid it. The newspapers get their photo of axes smashing wood. The captain gets a commendation, and your real operations continue without a hiccup. Everyone wins, except the law. Then you have the judges and the prosecutors. These are your insurance policies. You keep a stable of lawyers who are effectively bagmen in expensive suits. When one of your boys gets pinched, the legal machinery moves faster than a greyhound at your track. Here is a mainstream historical fact that illustrates the absurdity of your power. Your lawyers often arrive at the police station with a writ of habeas corpus signed by a judge before the arrested gangster has even been booked. The judge has pre-signed a stack of them. The ink is barely dry on the arrest report before the release order is slammed onto the desk. The police sergeant sighs, unlocks the cell, and your man is back on the street before his coffee gets cold. But the jewel in your crown, the most expensive item on the menu, is the mayor of Chicago, Big Bill Thompson. William Hale Thompson is a caricature of a politician. He is loud, corrupt, and flamboyantly anti-British. He once threatened to punch the King of England in the snoot, which plays well with the Irish and German voters. He runs on a platform of an open town. This is code for, I will let the liquor flow and the dice roll as long as the economy is good. You helped get him elected. During the election of 1927, you don't just donate money, you donate terror. This is known as the pineapple primary because of the number of grenades, pineapples, that detonate at the homes and offices of Thompson's opponents. You pledge nearly $250,000 to his campaign. In return, Big Bill gives you the keys to the city. Under his administration, Chicago becomes a wide-open town. The police are essentially told that unless a body is found in the street, there is no crime. Historians still argue whether you were the puppet master pulling Thompson's strings, or if Thompson was the true genius who used the criminal underworld to fund his political machine. Was he working for you, or were you just the bank for his political ambitions? It's a symbiotic relationship. He needs your money and muscle to stay in power. You need his apathy to stay out of prison. This leads to a bizarre reality where the police force becomes your private security detail. There are accounts of uniformed officers escorting you to boxing matches, clearing a path through the crowd so you don't have to jostle with the plebeians. When you go to the theater, police detectives guard your box. They aren't there to arrest you. They are there to make sure no rival gangster takes a potshot at you. You have effectively privatized the Chicago Police Department. But purchasing people requires a system. You can't just hand a sack of cash to a judge in a courtroom. You need bagmen. These are the intermediaries, often corrupt ward heelers or low-level fixers, who physically carry the money. They meet in diners, in bathrooms, in parked cars. The envelope becomes the currency of the realm. You have a ledger that lists names, but never titles. Evans, $500. Smith, $1,000. You know who they are. However, owning the law creates a dangerous arrogance. You start to believe that you are untouchable. You drive your armored Cadillac down Michigan Avenue at 60 miles an hour, ignoring traffic signals, while the traffic cops salute you. You have created a bubble where the consequences of your actions are constantly deferred by cash. But let's be real. You probably won't survive this if you are an honest man in the system. Imagine being a righteous prosecutor or a clean cop in 1927 Chicago. You are a pariah. If you try to investigate the outfit, you get transferred to the Sticks, the quietest, furthest precinct in the city where nothing happens. Your locker gets vandalized. Your backup doesn't show up when you call for help. The corruption is so systemic that honesty is viewed as a liability, a mental illness that needs to be cured or quarantined. This systemic rot allows you to pull off brazen stunts. When rival gangsters are gunned down, the investigations are laughably incompetent. Evidence goes missing from the police lockers. Witnesses suddenly develop amnesia or decide to take extended vacations to Florida. The coroner's reports are vague. Death by misadventure, or person or persons unknown, are the standard verdicts for men found with 10 bullets in their chest. One quirky fringe tidbit about your relationship with the law involves the Chicago handshake. No, not a drink. It was a specific way of passing a bribe during a handshake. You fold a bill, usually $100 or $500, into a tight square, palm it, and pass it during the greeting. You become an expert at this sleight of hand. You shake hands with a sergeant, and he walks away richer, without anyone seeing a thing. It's a magic trick where the rabbit is a wad of cash, and the disappearing act is justice. You also cultivate a weird sort of friendship with the press. You love the reporters. You give them interviews. You complain about the police harassment. You frame yourself as a victim of a hypocritical system. I give the public what they want, you tell them. I never forced a drink on any man. The reporters, often paid off or just charmed by your charisma, print it. You realize that while you can buy the police, you have to woo the public. But the cost of owning the law is rising. The protection payments are eating into your profits, and the greed of the politicians knows no bounds. Big Bill Thompson and his cronies always want more. You start to feel like the goose laying the golden eggs, and you wonder if they might one day decide to cook the goose just to see what's inside. You are sitting in the Metropole, looking at the list of judges on your payroll. It's a long list. You ask yourself, who costs more, a judge or a police captain? The answer is nuanced. The captain is a recurring cost, a monthly rent. The judge is a catastrophic coverage policy, expensive but necessary when the house catches fire. And the house is about to catch fire. Because while you have bought the city of Chicago, you cannot buy the entire United States government. And down in Washington, there are men who don't care about your envelopes. They are looking at your flashy suits, your armored car, and your smiling interviews, and they are not amused. But before the feds arrive, you have one more card to play. You have the people. You have the myth. You realize that if you can't be a legal citizen, you will be a celebrity. You will turn yourself into a folk hero, a modern-day Robin Hood, so that when the law finally comes for you, the people will cheer for the villain. But here's where things get strange. While most criminals work in the shadows, wearing masks and fleeing from cameras, you decide that the best place to hide is directly in the spotlight, preferably while shaking hands with the catcher at a Chicago Cubs game. You are crafting a persona that is baffling to the modern mind. Imagine a drug lord today, El Chapo or Pablo Escobar, sitting front row at the Super Bowl, signing autographs for kids and joking with the press. It sounds impossible, right? But in 1920 Chicago, that is your Tuesday afternoon. You realize that if the public loves you, the politicians will be afraid to touch you. You are building a shield made entirely of celebrity. You start with the look. You know you aren't a traditional beauty queen. You're bulky, you have a thick neck, and you have those 3 jagged scars running down your left cheek. Instead of hiding them, you distract from them. You wear suits of imported Italian silk in colors that scream for attention. Lime green, canary yellow, electric blue. You wear a diamond pinky ring that probably costs more than the pitcher's annual salary. You want to be seen. You want to be snorky. You become a fixture at Wrigley Field and Comiskey Park. You don't sit in a skybox behind glass. You sit in the front row. When a foul ball comes your way, you catch it and toss it to a kid. The crowd goes wild. People cheer for you louder than they cheer for the home run hitters. You wave your fedora, flashing that shark-like smile. You are the mascot of the city's defiance. You also become a master of the soundbite. You invite reporters to your office. You serve them drinks, illegal ones, of course, and cigars. You give them quotes that are pure gold. "I am just a businessman," you say, spreading your hands innocently. "I give the people what they want. All I do is satisfy a public demand." You position yourself not as a predator, but as a servant of the people. You ask, "I violate the prohibition law. Who doesn't?" It's a rhetorical question that makes every drinker in America nod in agreement. You are validating their vices. But then, the world shifts under your feet. The stock market crashes in 1929. The roaring 20s come to a screeching, grinding halt. The Great Depression begins. Suddenly, the factories in Cicero are silent. The men who used to gamble at your tracks are now standing in bread lines. The families who bought your beer are now struggling to buy milk. The government, led by Herbert Hoover, seems paralyzed. They are telling people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but the people have no boots. You see an opportunity. It is cynical, perhaps, but it is also brilliantly effective. You decide to do what the government won't. You feed the people. You open a soup kitchen at 935 South State Street. You don't hide your name, you splash it across the front. Free soup, coffee, and donuts for the unemployed. It isn't a government relief station. It is your kitchen. You serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The menu is simple but hearty. Beef stew, bread, coffee, and donuts. The line stretches for blocks. Men in tattered coats, shivering in the Chicago wind, wait for hours. Inside, you sometimes put on a white apron and ladle the soup yourself. You shake hands. You ask about their families. You are the big fellow, the provider. It is a mainstream historical fact that your kitchen served up to 5,000 men a day during the worst months of the early Depression. You are single-handedly keeping a significant portion of the South Side from starving. This creates a cognitive dissonance that drives the feds crazy. To the FBI, you are a monster who orders hits and corrupts justice. To the guy eating the soup, you are a saint who put warm food in his belly when the president wouldn't. You are the Robin Hood of the concrete jungle. You steal from you steal from everyone, really. But you give some of it back to the poor. Historians still argue whether this charity was a genuine act of Catholic guilt and empathy, or a cold-blooded public relations stunt designed to make a jury sympathetic if you ever went to trial. Some argue that you, having grown up poor in Brooklyn, genuinely felt for the working man. Others point out that the cost of the soup kitchen was a fraction of your weekly bribe budget, making it the cheapest and most effective advertising campaign in history. Regardless of the motive, it works. You receive fan mail, literally, sacks of it. People from all over the world write to you. They ask for money. They ask for jobs. They ask for advice. You have secretaries whose job is to sort through the admiration. Here is a quirky fringe tidbit. You actually received marriage proposals in the mail from women who had never met you. They saw the pictures of you in your silk suits, read about your power and your generosity, and decided that Scarface was the ideal husband. It speaks to the strange psychology of the era, the hybristophilia, or attraction to criminals, but also to the desperate economic times where a man with money, regardless of source, was a catch. You also play the role of the benevolent community pillar in other ways. If a local widow is being evicted, stories circulate that you paid her rent. If a kid needs an operation, Santa Claus Capone steps in. You demand that the merchants in Cicero keep their prices fair for the locals. You are a warlord, yes, but you are their warlord. But this visibility is a double-edged sword. By making yourself a celebrity, you are humiliating the authorities. Every time a newspaper runs a headline calling you the King of Chicago, a bureaucrat in Washington turns a deeper shade of purple. You are proving that crime does pay, and it pays well enough to buy soup for thousands. You are becoming a symbol of the government's impotence, and there is a danger in believing your own press. You start to think you are actually a good guy. You start to rationalize the violence. You tell yourself that you only kill bad people, other gangsters who broke the rules. You convince yourself that you are bringing order to chaos. You forget that the soup you are serving is paid for by the blood of men like Frank Capone and the fear of the laundry owners. You are living in a bubble of adulation. You walk down the street and people wave. Police officers tip their caps. You feel invincible. You think you can talk your way out of anything because the people are on your side. But the Robin Hood myth has a fatal flaw. Robin Hood lived in the forest and stole from the rich to give to the poor. You live in a penthouse and steal from everyone to keep for yourself, tossing a few crumbs to the crowd. And eventually, the crowd's hunger will be satisfied, or the spectacle will turn grim. The facade of the benevolent businessman is about to be tested. You can smile for the cameras all you want, but the nature of your business is violence. And soon, the violence is going to spill out of the back alleys and into the headlines in a way that no amount of free soup can wash away. You are planning a move to consolidate power, a final blow to the North Side gang that still nips at your heels. You think it will be just another hit, another necessary housekeeping measure. But you are about to orchestrate an event so bloody, so shocking, that it will shatter your Robin Hood image forever and force the federal government to take the gloves off. The winter of 1929 is cold, but Valentine's Day is going to be red hot. But here's where things get strange. You can serve soup to 5,000 hungry people and be called a saint, but if you line up 7 gangsters against a brick wall and turn them into Swiss cheese, the public suddenly forgets about the donuts. You are relaxing in your Palm Island mansion in Miami. It is February 14th, 1929. The sun is shining, the palm trees are swaying, and you have a meeting with the local district attorney, not to bribe him, but to innocently ask for legal advice, creating a rock-solid, time-stamped alibi hundreds of miles away from the snow and grime of Chicago. You are playing the part of the retired businessman perfectly. But while you are sipping iced tea, your orders are being carried out in a freezing garage at 2122 North Clark Street. The target is George "Bugs" Moran. He is the last obstacle. He is the leader of the North Side Gang, the man who tried to kill you, the man who insulted your heritage. You want him gone. And you don't want a street war, you want a surgical strike. The plan is brilliant in its treachery. You have arranged a fake delivery of high-quality, hijacked whiskey at a bargain price. The Northsiders are greedy. They take the bait. They gather at the SMC Cartage Company garage at 10:30 a.m. to wait for the truck. Then, a Cadillac pulls up. It looks like a detective's car. 4 men jump out. 2 are wearing police uniforms. Inside the garage, the 7 men, 6 mobsters and 1 unfortunate mechanic who just liked hanging around gangsters, see the uniforms. They think it's a routine shakedown. "Up against the wall," the fake cops shout. The gangsters comply. They turn their backs. They spread their legs. They expect a pat-down, maybe a ride to the station, and a quick bailout by lunch. They are calm. They are professionals. Then the 2 officers step aside, and the 2 men in plain clothes pull out Thompson's submachine guns. It isn't a fight. It is a slaughter. The air in the garage explodes with the deafening chatter of the Tommy guns. 70 rounds tear into the backs of the men. Dust and brick chips fly. The bodies slump to the floor in a heap of tweed and blood. To make absolutely sure, the shooters walk up and deliver shotgun blasts to the heads of 2 of the victims. It is overkill. It is a message. But here is the twist that will haunt you. Bugs Moran isn't there. He was late. He was walking down the street, saw the police car, assumed it was a raid, and ducked into a coffee shop to wait it out. He survives. You have massacred his entire staff, but the general is still alive, and he knows exactly who did it. When reporters find Moran later, shaking and pale, he spits out the words that will define your legacy. Only Capone kills like that. The fallout is instantaneous and nuclear. You thought the public would see this as criminal housekeeping. You thought they would shrug and say, well, bad guys killing bad guys. You were wrong. The photographs of the scene, the bloody, tangled bodies lying at the base of that brick wall, are splashed across every newspaper in America. It is too much. It is too grotesque. The romantic veneer of the bootlegger is stripped away, revealing the cold-blooded butcher underneath. The Robin Hood of the soup kitchen is dead. In his place stands public enemy number 1. The Chicago Crime Commission releases a list of public enemies, and your name is at the very top. It's a branding disaster. The business community, the Secret Six, demands action. They pressure the White House. President Herbert Hoover, who is already dealing with a failing economy, decides he needs a win. He tells his Treasury Secretary, Andrew Mellon, to get Capone. He doesn't care how, just get him. Suddenly, the federal agents aren't just annoying pests, they are a swarm. You have woken the sleeping giant. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact that underscores the horror of the scene. There was one survivor, briefly. Frank Gusenberg, one of Moran's enforcers, was riddled with 14 bullets. When the real police arrived, he was still breathing. A sergeant leaned down and asked, "Who shot you, Frank?" In true underworld code, honoring the law of omerta to his dying breath, Frank whispered, "Nobody shot me." He died 3 hours later. But while Frank kept his mouth shut, A dog did not. This is the quirky fringe tidbit of the massacre. The only witness left in the garage was a German shepherd named Highball, tied to one of the trucks. The dog was physically unharmed, but psychologically shattered. When the police arrived, the dog was howling, a mournful, terrifying sound that echoed off the blood-spattered bricks. The police actually had to arrest the dog because it was so traumatized it tried to bite anyone who came near the bodies. The sound of that howling dog became a detail that reporters used to chill the blood of their readers. Historians still argue about the identity of the actual shooters. You were in Florida. Machine Gun Jack McGurn, your top hitman, had a rock-solid alibi. He was in a hotel with his girlfriend, his blonde alibi. Most scholars believe the shooters were imported talent, members of Egan's Rats from St. Louis, or other out-of-towners unknown to the Chicago police. The uniforms were likely stolen or rented. To this day, the St. Valentine's Day massacre remains officially unsolved. No one ever went to trial for it. But in the court of public opinion, you are guilty as sin. You try to handle the PR crisis. You call the newspapers. I'm a businessman, you plead. I don't like violence. But nobody is buying it anymore. The soup is cold. The image is shattered. You start to feel the heat. It's not just the newspapers. It's the other bosses. You have brought too much attention to the rackets. The National Crime Syndicate, the loose affiliation of gangs across the country, is looking at you not as a leader, but as a liability. You are bad for business. When the President of the United States knows your name, it becomes very hard to bribe a beat cop. You realize you need to disappear for a while. You need a vacation in a place where no one can shoot you, and the press can't interview you. In May 1929, just a few months after the massacre, you find yourself in Philadelphia. You are on your way back to Chicago from a meeting in Atlantic City, which we'll get to in a minute. You and your bodyguard are stopped by police outside a movie theater. You are carrying 38 revolvers. You are arrested for carrying concealed deadly weapons. Now, usually, Al Capone doesn't get arrested for a gun charge. You have permits, you have lawyers, you have judges. But this time, you plead guilty. Immediately. You are sentenced to 1 year in prison. Many historians believe this was a strategic imprisonment. You wanted to go to jail. Eastern State Penitentiary is a fortress. Inside, you are safe from Bugs Moran's revenge. You are safe from the federal heat in Chicago. It's a cooling-off period. And let's be honest, your version of prison isn't exactly hard time. You are allowed to furnish your cell at Eastern State. You have expensive rugs, a desk, a radio, and oil paintings on the walls. You listen to waltzes. You conduct business through your lawyers. It's a timeout in a luxury suite with bars. But while you are sitting in your cozy cell listening to the radio, the world outside is changing. The stock market has fully crashed. The depression is deepening. And the federal agents, specifically a young, zealous prohibition agent named Elliot Ness and a quiet, bespectacled IRS agent named Frank Wilson, are not taking a time out. They are digging. They are looking at the one thing you can't hide, even in a prison cell. The paper trail. The massacre was a tactical victory. The North Side gang never truly recovered, but it was a strategic suicide. You won the battle for the streets, but you started a war with the United States government. And unlike the Chicago police, the feds don't take Chicago handshakes. You sit in your cell, staring at the painting on the wall, thinking you are smart for hiding out. But you don't realize that by the time you get out, the rules of the game will have changed completely. You are no longer the hunter. You are the prey. But here's where things get strange. To save your criminal empire from destruction, you don't retreat to a bunker or buy more machine guns. You go to the beach, rent a suite at the Ritz, and act like a corporate executive attending a sales convention. Before you checked into that luxury cell in Philadelphia we just mentioned, there was a summit. A moment where the underworld tried to become the upper world. It is May 1929. The heat from the St. Valentine's Day massacre is still blistering. The federal government is poking its nose where it doesn't belong. You realize, along with the other heavy hitters of the American mob, that the Wild West era of shooting each other over street corners is bad for the bottom line. It brings bodies, it brings cops, and it scares the customers. So, you pack your bags for Atlantic City. This is the Atlantic City Conference, the first major peace summit of organized crime in America. And you aren't hiding in a basement. You are guests of Enoch "Nucky" Johnson, the undisputed boss of Atlantic City. Nucky is a man after your own heart, loud, corrupt, and incredibly hospitable. He controls the boardwalk, the booze, and the police. For this weekend, the Ritz-Carlton on the boardwalk belongs to you and your colleagues. Imagine the scene. You are walking along the wooden planks of the boardwalk, smelling the salt air and the roasting peanuts. You are wearing a cream-colored suit. Next to you is Lucky Luciano, the rising star from New York. There's Meyer Lansky, the financial wizard who looks more like a librarian than a gangster. There's Frank Costello. And surprisingly, there is your old mentor, Johnny Torrio, who has come out of semi-retirement to mediate this mess. You are the Avengers of crime, assembled to save the industry from itself. But let's be honest, you are the reason they are all here. You are the problem child. The other bosses look at you with a mix of admiration and disdain. They admire the money you make. Nobody earns like Chicago, but they hate the noise you make. The St. Valentine's Day massacre was too loud. It was sloppy. It brought the heat. Meyer Lansky, in his quiet, calculating voice, explains the new reality to you. Al, we run a business. We aren't cowboys. When you kill people in broad daylight, you hurt the share price. The goal of this conference is to corporatize crime. You sit in a smoke-filled room in the Ritz, looking at maps of the United States. You aren't carving up a turkey, you are carving up a nation. The idea is to create a national crime syndicate, a board of directors. If there is a dispute between gangs, you don't go to the mattresses, you go to the commission. You arbitrate, you negotiate. It is the formation of a shadow government. This is a mainstream historical fact that changes everything. The Atlantic City Conference effectively killed the old Mustache Pete way of doing things, where Sicilian bosses only worked with Sicilians and fought everyone else. This conference bridged the gap between the Italian, Jewish, and Irish mobs. It created a multi-ethnic conglomerate focused on profit, not blood feuds. And you, despite your violent reputation, are a key part of this. You agree to the terms. You agree to end the beer wars. You agree to respect boundaries. But the conference isn't all spreadsheets and stern lectures. Nucky Johnson knows how to host. You guys are living like kings. You take over entire floors of the hotel. There are parties. There are women. There is an endless flow of top-shelf liquor, which is ironic since you are all bootleggers drinking your own supply. One quirky fringe tidbit about this weekend is the sand in the shoes incident. Legend has it that you and Lucky Luciano went for a walk on the beach to cool off after a heated argument. You, being a city boy used to pavement, hated the sand getting in your expensive Italian shoes. You allegedly spent half the walk complaining about the grit, rather than discussing the fate of the underworld. It's a humanizing moment. The most dangerous man in America, defeated by a little silica in his sock. However, the tension in the room is real. The other bosses are pressuring you. They tell you that you are too visible. You are the lightning rod attracting the federal storm. They suggest, strongly, that you need to do something to lower the temperature. This leads to a fascinating scholarly debate. Did the Philadelphia arrest happen to you, or did you order it for yourself? Remember the gun charge in Philly from the previous section? Many historians argue that it was actually agreed upon right here in Atlantic City. The theory goes that the commission told you, Al, you need to go away for a bit. Take a vacation at the government's expense. Let the press cool down. Let the feds chase their tails. The arrest in Philadelphia, just days after this conference, was suspiciously easy. You surrendered your gun. You pleaded guilty immediately. The sentence was light. It fits the narrative of a strategic retreat perfectly. If this is true, it shows a level of cunning that goes beyond just brute force. It means you were willing to sacrifice your freedom temporarily to save your empire permanently. You play the role of the martyr for the syndicate. So, the deal is struck. You agree to dismantle the Chicago fortress mentality and play ball with the national organization. You shake hands with Lansky and Luciano. You hug Johnny Torrio. You promise to be a good CEO. But as you pack your bags to leave the Ritz, looking out at the Atlantic Ocean one last time, you feel a shift. The era of the celebrity gangster is ending. The future belongs to the quiet ones like Lansky, men who will die in their beds of old age, unseen by the cameras. You are a dinosaur, a T-Rex in a world that is starting to favor the velociraptors. You leave Atlantic City with a plan. You will take the fall in Philly. You will sit in your luxury cell. You will let the heat die down. And when you come out, you will return to a calm, organized, profitable Chicago. But here is the fatal flaw in your plan. While you are schmoozing on the boardwalk and planning your prison vacation, the federal government isn't resting. They aren't waiting for you to come back. They have assembled a team in Chicago that doesn't care about your treaties or your syndicates. While you are sipping cocktails with Nucky Johnson, a young, serious man named Elliot Ness is gathering a squad of agents who cannot be bought. And another man, a quiet accountant named Frank Wilson, is sitting in a windowless room, staring at a pile of ledgers with your name on them. You think you have managed the other criminals. You think you have pacified the competition. But you have forgotten the one enemy you can't negotiate with, the bureaucracy. You step into the car that will take you toward Philadelphia and your strategic arrest, feeling smart. You don't realize that back in Chicago, the sledgehammers are coming out. The beer wars might be over, but the tax wars are just beginning. And your absence is going to leave your empire exposed in ways you never imagined. But here's where things get strange. Usually, when a police officer kicks down your door, you just reach for your wallet. But with this new guy, reaching for your wallet is the most insulting thing you can do. You are back in Chicago, or at least, your spirit is, even if your body is sometimes cooling its heels in a cell or managing from a distance. You are looking at the reports from the breweries, and the numbers are bleeding red. It's not the economy, it's a pest. A relentless, irritating 26-year-old pest named Elliot Ness. You are used to opponents who play by the rules of the underworld. You understand greed. You understand fear. But Ness is something you haven't encountered before. A true believer. He is a graduate of the University of Chicago. He reads Sherlock Holmes, and he has a moral compass that points so rigidly north, it might as well be frozen. He has been tasked by the district attorney to head a special prohibition unit. But Ness knows the Chicago police are rotten to the core. He knows that if he plans a raid with the regular cops, you will know about it before he even puts his hat on. So, he goes rogue. He scours the personnel files of the Prohibition Bureau to find men who haven't been bought yet. He looks for the outliers. He finds a former lumberjack, a telephone tapping expert, a driver who can handle a car like a stuntman. He assembles a squad of roughly 10 men. They are young, they are single, and they are angry. They are the Untouchables. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The name, the Untouchables, wasn't a cool nickname they gave themselves. It was given to them by a reporter from the Chicago Tribune. It happened after one of your men tried to bribe Ness. You sent an emissary to offer him $2,000 a week, about $35,000 a week in today's money, just to take it easy. Ness not only refused, but he also went to the press and publicly announced that neither he nor his men could be bought. In your world, refusing money isn't just stupid, it's a declaration of war, and the war is loud. Ness doesn't just arrest people, he smashes your infrastructure. He builds a custom truck. It's a flatbed with a giant steel snowplow welded to the front. They call it the Ram. When your boys barricade the doors of a brewery with oak beams and steel plates, Ness doesn't knock. He drives the Ram through the front door at 30 miles an hour, splintering wood and shattering the defenses. Then, they go to work with axes. They don't confiscate the beer to sell it, which is what corrupt cops do. They destroy it. They smash the vats. They open the taps. You have to watch, helpless, as thousands of gallons of your premium product, liquid gold, drain into the sewers of Chicago. The streets literally smell of yeast and wasted profit. This hits you where it hurts. It's not about the jail time for the low-level workers. You can bail them out. It's the cost of goods sold. Every brewery Ness smashes costs you tens of thousands of dollars to replace. The copper stills, the fermentation tanks, the trucks. It disrupts the supply chain. Your speakeasy owners are calling, asking where the beer is. You have to tell them there's a delay. That makes you look weak. But Ness isn't just destroying your property. He is trolling you. Here is a quirky, fringe tidbit that shows just how personal this got. Ness knew you were staying at the Lexington Hotel. He knew you prided yourself on your power. So, after a particularly successful raid where he seized a fleet of your new delivery trucks, he didn't just drive them to the impound lot. He organized a parade. Ness had his men drive your trucks, polished and shiny, in a slow convoy right past the front door of the Lexington Hotel. He called the press to watch. He wanted you to look out your window and see your own assets being paraded by the government. It was a slap in the face. It was psychological warfare. You are reportedly so furious that you scream and throw things in your suite, but you can't touch him. He's too high profile now. If Ness ends up dead in a ditch, the federal government will send the Marines. However, historians still argue whether Elliot Ness was actually the man who brought you down, or if he was just a glorified PR stunt. The popular narrative, fueled by Ness's own book and the Kevin Costner movie, is that Ness defeated Capone. But legal scholars and historians point out that Ness never successfully pinned a major murder or racketeering charge on you. His raids were expensive and annoying, but they were essentially property crimes. He was fighting the symptoms, not the disease. The real threat was coming from a different department entirely. But Ness provided the smoke that blinded you to the fire. Still, the stress is mounting. You are fighting a war on two fronts. On the streets, you have to dodge Ness and his axes. He is wiretapping your phones, something that was legally gray at the time but effective. He knows where the trucks are going. He knows where the breweries are. You have to keep moving your operations, setting up in smaller, harder-to-find locations. You start brewing in basements again instead of warehouses. You are regressing. The industrial efficiency you built is being dismantled by a Boy Scout with a sledgehammer. You try to intimidate them. You have your men tail the untouchables. You make threatening phone calls to their wives. You park dark sedans outside their houses. But these guys, they don't scare. In fact, it seems to fuel them. They wear the threats like badges of honor. It's infuriating. You are the scariest man in America, and these guys are treating you like a nuisance. The financial strain is real. The depression has already lowered the price people are willing to pay for beer. And now your overhead is skyrocketing because you have to constantly rebuild breweries. You are hemorrhaging cash. You have to cut corners. Maybe you don't pay the police captains as much this month. Maybe you delay a shipment of bribes. And that is dangerous. When the money stops flowing, the loyalty starts to dry up. You look at the newspaper. There is Ness again, smiling next to a pile of smashed barrels. The headline reads, "Capone Empire Crumbling." It's not true. You still have millions buried in holes and hidden in safes, but perception is reality. If the other gangs think you are weak, they might start getting ideas. If the public thinks you are losing, the Robin Hood shine wears off fast. You realize that for the first time in your life, you can't shoot your way out of a problem, and you can't buy your way out of it. You are stuck in a game of whack-a-mole with a federal agent who doesn't drink, doesn't gamble, and doesn't take bribes. It is a clash of cultures. You represent the chaotic, indulgent, violent freedom of the roaring 20s. Ness represents the sober, rigid, bureaucratic order of the coming decade. And frankly, you probably won't survive this shift. The party is ending. The lights are coming on. And the hangover is going to be brutal. But while you are fixated on the loud crashes of axes on wood and the siren wail of the police raids, you are missing the quiet scratching sound coming from the room next door. You are watching the front door, waiting for the battering ram. You should be watching the mail slot. Because while Ness is smashing barrels, the guys who are actually going to kill you, metaphorically speaking, are the ones who look like librarians. They don't carry Tommy guns, they carry fountain pens. And they are about to prove that in America, the only thing more dangerous than a gangster with a gun is an accountant with a calculator. But here's where things get strange. The most dangerous weapon in the United States arsenal isn't a Thompson submachine gun or a battering ram. It is a fountain pen held by a man wearing thick glasses who suspects you forgot to carry the one. You are watching Elliot Ness smash your breweries, and you are worried about the lost beer. You are watching the hitmen of the North Side, and you are worried about your physical safety. But while you are distracted by the noise, a quiet, bespectacled man named Frank Wilson is sitting in a cramped, windowless office in the federal building, sifting through 2 million documents. He is not looking for bodies, he is looking for a signature. This is the Special Intelligence Unit of the IRS. These men, known as the T-Men, are the real threat. Unlike Ness, they don't hold press conferences, they don't drive snowplows through doors, they work in silence. And they have a weapon that you, in all your street-smart brilliance, have completely underestimated. The Supreme Court ruling in United States v. Sullivan. In 1927, the Supreme Court decided that illegal income is still taxable. It is a legal catch-22 of nightmarish proportions. If you file a tax return declaring you're bootlegging millions, you are confessing to a federal crime, violation of the Volstead Act, and can be prosecuted. If you don't file a return, you are guilty of tax evasion, which is also a federal crime. You are damned if you do, and damned if you don't. You, arrogant and advised by lawyers who perhaps underestimated the government's resolve, chose to simply not file. You figured, I'm a criminal. Why would I pay taxes? Big mistake. Frank Wilson is obsessed. He sleeps 2 hours a night. He is hunting for the smoking gun. But you are a ghost. You own nothing in your own name. Your house in Miami? Bought through a frontman. Your armored Cadillac? Registered to a shell company. You deal exclusively in cash. There are no checks, no wire transfers, no paper trail. You are confident that you are invisible to the banking system. But Wilson is patient. He finds the thread you forgot to cut. It takes us back to the raid on the Hawthorne Hotel in Cicero years ago, the time you got slapped with the bad press but no charges. During that raid, police seized a pile of dusty, seemingly useless ledgers. They were tossed in an evidence locker and forgotten. Wilson finds them. He starts analyzing the handwriting. He sees entries for A, Ralph, and Al. He sees amounts that correspond to the profits of a massive gambling operation. Now he just needs to prove that Al is you, Al Capone. He tracks down the bookkeepers. This is the unglamorous, gritty detective work that Hollywood ignores. Wilson scours the city for the handwriting match. He finds a man named Leslie Shumway, a mousy little accountant who used to work at the Hawthorne dog track. Wilson finds him in Miami, working at a dog track there. Wilson puts the squeeze on Shumway. Testify against Capone or go to prison for the rest of your life. Shumway cracks. He confirms that the ledgers are real. He confirms that Al is the boss. He confirms that the millions of dollars in net profit went directly to you. But Wilson needs more than just a ledger. He needs to prove you spent the money. If you have no income, how are you living like a king? This leads to a quirky fringe tidbit about the investigation. The feds spent months investigating your underwear. Yes, really. Wilson and his team went to Marshall Field's department store and interviewed the clerks. They found records of you buying high-end, custom-made silk underwear, imported suits, and diamond-studded belt buckles. They tracked the furniture you bought for your Miami estate. They found a receipt for $27 spent on, wait for it, towels. They built a net worth case. They proved that a man with zero reported income was spending tens of thousands of dollars a year on luxury goods. In the eyes of the IRS, that money had to come from somewhere, and since you didn't declare it, you were hiding it. You are starting to feel the net tighten, but you still think you can fix this. You treat the U.S. government like a rival gang leader. You think, okay, I owe them money, I'll just pay them. You send your lawyers to meet with the IRS. You offer a settlement. You say, look, maybe Al overlooked a few things. We are willing to pay $4 million in back taxes and interest to make this go away. Think about that number. $4 million in 1930. That is an admission of guilt so massive it boggles the mind. This leads to the Mattingly letter. Your lawyer, Lawrence Mattingly, writes a letter to the government to negotiate the payment. In this letter, he admits that you had an income during the years in question. He tries to estimate it to show good faith. Historians still argue whether Mattingly was incompetent or if he was simply outplayed by the government. By writing that letter, he handed the prosecution a signed confession. He admitted you made money. The government takes the letter, smiles, and says, "Thank you very much. We reject your settlement offer, but we will be keeping this letter as evidence, Exhibit A." You have just been incriminated by your own defense team. You panic. You realize this isn't going away. You try the old methods. You put out a contract on Frank Wilson's life. You offer $25,000 to anyone who puts a bullet in the accountant. But here is a mainstream historical fact that shows how much your power has faded. The word comes down from the Commission, the other bosses in New York. They tell you, no. They warn you that killing a federal agent, specifically an IRS agent, will bring down a wrath that will destroy the entire syndicate. You can kill a cop, they say, but you can't kill the tax man. They force you to cancel the hit. You are neutered. You, the man who ordered the St. Valentine's Day massacre, are forbidden from touching a man with a calculator. The indictment comes down. You are charged with 22 counts of tax evasion and 5,000 violations of the Volstead Act. The government decides to focus on the tax charges because they are easier to prove. The jury doesn't need to know if you ordered a murder. They just need to know if you bought a rug and didn't tell the government where you got the money. You are still outwardly cocky. You tell the press, they can't tax illegal money. You still believe that a jury of your peers, Chicago citizens who have been drinking your beer and eating your soup for a decade, will never convict you. You think you are the hero. But deep down, you feel the chill. You look at the evidence Wilson has compiled. It is boring. It is dry. It is deadly. It is boxes and boxes of receipts, ledgers, and witness statements. It is a mountain of paperwork that you can't blow up with a grenade. You realize that you forgot the cardinal rule of business. You have to pay the partner who allows you to operate. And the United States government is the biggest partner of all. As the trial date approaches, you reach into your bag of tricks for one last Hail Mary pass. You have the jury list. You have the money. You decide that if you can't win the case on the facts, you will simply buy the verdict. You have done it 100 times before. Why should this be any different? You sit in the Lexington Hotel, chomping on a cigar, listening to the radio. The announcers are talking about the trial of the century. You smile. You've already bribed the jury pool. You think you have already won. But you probably won't survive the surprise that the judge has waiting for you on the morning of the trial. The system has learned your tricks, Al, and they are about to pull a switcheroo that will leave you gasping for air. But here's where things get strange. The judge doesn't look at the law books to screw you over. He looks at the bailiff and orders a game of musical chairs with the entire jury. It is October 6th, 1931. You are sitting at the defense table in the federal building, wearing a mustard-colored suit that costs more than the judge's car. You are relaxed. You are smiling at the reporters. In your pocket, metaphorically speaking, is the jury list. Your guys have gotten to them. Bribes have been paid. Threats have been whispered. You know the verdict before the opening arguments are even read. You are going to walk. Then, Judge James H. Wilkerson enters the courtroom. He is a small man, but he has a look in his eye that you don't like. He takes his seat, looks at the jury box filled with the men you bought, and then looks at the bailiff. "Judge Edwards has another trial starting down the hall," Wilkerson says calmly. "Take this entire panel of jurors and swap them with his panel." The air leaves the room. Your lawyer's jaw hits the table. Your smile freezes and then slowly dissolves. In 30 seconds, your entire investment, the bribes, the threats, the planning, evaporates. A fresh, unbribed, terrified group of citizens is marched into the box. These people haven't been paid off. They have just been reading the newspapers about how you are a monster. You look at their faces, and you see the one thing you can't buy: judgment. The trial is a slow-motion car crash. You have to listen to the mousy accountant, Leslie Shumway, detail every dollar you stole. You have to watch the Mattingly letter, your own lawyer's confession, being passed around the jury box like a smoking gun. You try to look charming, but without the fix-in, you just look like a rich gangster trying to dodge the bill. On October 17th, the verdict comes in. You are found guilty on 5 counts of tax evasion. You expect a slap on the wrist, a short stint, maybe a fine. Instead, Wilkerson drops the hammer. 11 years in federal prison, a $50,000 fine. It is the harshest sentence ever delivered for tax evasion in American history. As the gavel bangs, you realize the party is officially over. The King of Chicago is now just federal prisoner number 40886. You start your sentence in Atlanta, U.S. Penitentiary. At first, you try to run it like the Lexington Hotel. You have a rug in your cell. You have a mirror. You tip the guards. You are still snorky. You have access to cash, and you are running the outfit from the warden's office via telegraph. But the government is tired of your show. They want to erase you. In 1934, they decide to move you to a new experiment in penology, Alcatraz. The transfer is a nightmare. You are put on a train with barred windows. When you arrive in San Francisco Bay, you see it. The Rock. A slab of concrete jutting out of the freezing water, shrouded in fog. This isn't a prison, it's a tomb for the living. In Alcatraz, you are stripped of everything. No name, just a number, AZ-85. No cash, no contacts. The warden, James A. Johnston, is incorruptible. If you try to bribe a guard, you go to the hole, a pitch-black solitary confinement cell that freezes your bones. You are forced to work. The man who made $100 million a year is now mopping floors and doing laundry for 12 cents an hour. This is where the decline becomes truly tragic. You aren't the boss here. You are a target. The other inmates don't respect you. They resent you. You are a screw, a celebrity who got all the attention. This brings us to a quirky, fringe tidbit about your fall. You, the terrifying gangster, take up the banjo. You join the prison band, the Rock Islanders. You sit in the recreation yard, strumming simplified jazz tunes, trying to find some rhythm in the silence. But the other inmates hate it. They boo you. There is a story that you once asked a fellow inmate, a bank robber, if he knew a certain tune. The robber looked at you, the former Lord of Chicago, and sneered, "Capone, you have a tin ear." You didn't kill him. You just looked down and kept strumming. But the real enemy isn't the guards or the inmates, it's your own blood. The syphilis you caught years ago, the love tap from the brothels, has gone neuro. It is eating your mind. You start to become confused. You forget where you are. You make your bed and then unmake it 5 minutes later. Historians still argue whether your mental decline in Alcatraz was purely the result of neurosyphilis, or if the psychological crushing of the Rock broke your spirit before the bacteria finished the job. Was it the disease, or was it the total loss of power that turned you into a ghost? The records show you spent the last year of your sentence in the hospital ward, raving at invisible enemies, giving orders to henchmen who weren't there. In 1939, you are released, but Al Capone doesn't walk out of prison. A shell of a man shuffles out. You are 40 years old, but you have the mind of a 12-year-old. Your family takes you to Palm Island in Florida. The last years are a quiet, sad epilogue. You spend your days fishing in your swimming pool. You have imaginary conversations with Johnny Torrio. You rave about the Bolsheviks. The FBI stops monitoring you because there is nothing left to monitor. The lion has lost his teeth, his roar, and his mind. On January 25, 1947, your heart finally stops. You die of cardiac arrest after a stroke. You are 48 years old. The funeral is private. You are buried in Chicago. The empire you built, the breweries, the racetracks, the brothels, is dismantled or absorbed by the outfit, which moves on without you. The Chicago way evolves into a quiet corporate enterprise, learning the lesson you taught them. Fame is fatal. So, what is the final ledger? You made hundreds of millions of dollars. You owned a city. You became the most famous American of your century, more recognizable than the president. But you died in diapers, delirious, bankrupted by the government, and broken by a disease you caught in a cheap crib. You left behind a legacy of blood, a legend of glamour, and a warning that echoes through history. You can buy the law, you can buy the public, and you can buy the gun, but you can never, ever buy the time.